Before I start the video, I'd just like to say that the Broken Politics podcast is now on Anchor Podcasts, Breaker Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Spotify. Hope you enjoy the video. Think for a second. What would you do if you could control what millions of Americans think, see, or talk about? You may think to yourself, well, that's a lot of power, and it is. Each time the media pushes for or against an issue, this is what happens and problems arise. The corporate media. It controls what millions see and learn, who they vote for, and what matters to most Americans. Now, as I said in my last video, there will be problems that arise due to them being so powerful. But I'm not just talking about the clickbaity articles or the lies and deception. I'm talking about something entirely different. The media, in an attempt to keep viewers at the edge of their seat and to pull them in, purposely uses vocabulary and footage of events that, in many cases, invoke emotions which damage the mental health of Americans. If you care about learning about these things, recognizing them, and understanding the impact, then this video is for you. In every news article, segment, or story, there are parts which come together that directly affect the viewer and compel them to both watch more and feel like there's a threat that will directly affect them. The most common of these is the teaser. The teaser acts as the hook to a paragraph, the attention grabber. These are usually right before a commercial break and tell the viewer to stick around, as they'll be addressing the solution to a serious problem that could affect you. Here, let me show you an example. This is from March 22nd this year on CNN with Natalie Allen as the host. Each time before commercial break, they will fearmonger and pull you in so that you keep watching. During the second commercial break, they mention Iran turning its largest mall into a hospital, a quote, severe shortage of ventilators, and that when they get back, they will talk about the companies trying to solve that problem. And the ironic thing about that is, as soon as they get back, they talk about deaths in Iran and how it's a concern to Iranian authorities. Now, to give them credit, they do follow through with their word about how companies are trying to produce more ventilators, but that's after the talks of death. Do they talk about anything else positive? On that very same date, London books 300 hotel rooms for the homeless so they can isolate. No mention of that. Do they talk about the 20 coronavirus vaccines that are in development, or that some are in clinical trials in record time? No mention of that either. Maybe this is a one-off chance I've picked here. Let's go 3 days later, on March 26th. This time, we have Anderson Cooper as host of the Coronavirus Town Hall. Should be fun. Maybe they can bring people hope. Let's go down to the first commercial break. Right, so we have people talk of running out of grave sites, burying people in an ice rink, and of course, deaths. What about the second commercial? Talk of a recession and economic impacts. Now, as before, CNN isn't necessarily lying, but it mainly talks about bad news. What about the good news on this date? An 102-year-old survived coronavirus after 20 days in the hospital. No mention of that. What about the Italian engineer who turned scuba masks into ventilators? Still, no mention. So, is this expected? Maybe not to the average viewer who doesn't look into it. This is, a disgrace on the media's part, but it is exactly what they've turned into. Pander to the establishment agenda, talk about fears and worries, and fight with emotions. Because, who cares about good things during the pandemic? We like to talk about the worst of the worst. And this is ultimately why the saying goes, that if there is a bad news story, it leads more people to react to fear and go with it. Or simply put, if it bleeds, it leads. So, as I'm making my video, I see this on Twitter, and this entire headline is, while correct, is a complete play on words. It really is. So, of course, due to all this fear, it is bound to affect the mental health of anyone watching. Many friends and personal family that I know or know of have increasingly had panic attacks due to the constant negativity and fear the media puts out. And according to licensed psychologist Logan Jones, consuming too much media can, quote, be very toxic and, quote, have an impact on your mood. He then goes on to say that even if it's playing in the background of your house, it can, quote, still have a negative effect on your psyche. In addition to that, When Graham Davy, a professor of psychology at the University of Sussex, England, surveyed two groups, one shown a positive news bulletin and the other a negative news bulletin, it was shown that 1. Those who viewed the negative bulletin were more likely to make fears worse than they actually are. 2. The negative bulletin made people more anxious and nervous of the events going on around them. And 3. Negative reporting can exacerbate the problem by making people fearful of issues surrounding them, and not just a problem being reported on itself. As you can see from both pieces of evidence, the media and its majority of content being revolved around bad news to lure in viewers or to push an agenda is damaging the psyche of many Americans. Thanks to money and media becoming larger influences in the world and the additional sensitization that's added thanks to the 24/7 hour news cycle, the old days of honest journalism and thought-out news are stripped due to the immediate availability and spread of news on the internet. Many things in this video you may or may not have known. If not, good. I hope you can filter out much of what the media says and form your own opinions, while at the same time taking a break if needed because of the fear and negativity the media puts out. If you knew what I was talking about, that's great, but what I need you to do is spread this video while also teaching others who may not know, whether that be just pointing out the negative vocabulary or the footage they present. You need to teach others that the media is driving an agenda, while at the same time pointing out the good in issues that are bad. So let's say the media presents a bad issue, look at all the good and positive notes in it. Then you can help others. One last thing before I go. We as Americans have to remember that this is a long-term issue. Right now, we need to look at both bad media, good media. We need to look at all sorts of media and form our own opinions, whether that be a bad, good, or neutral story. We need to look at all of those, compile them, compare the differences, and form our own opinions from those. That is how we move forward. Otherwise, we can't get past this. So, with that said, I hope this video was valuable to you, and thank you for watching.